Welcome back. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the delimitation of constituencies represents the constitutional commitment for a fair representation of citizens in an electoral framework. The 2021 census, which was delayed by the COVID-19 pandemic, is now expected to begin this year and will be followed by the delimitation of constituencies in 2026. But until then, the constituency boundaries have been frozen as per the 84th Amendment to the Constitution Act 2002. The number of constituencies in Parliament and state assemblies is adjusted according to the latest population figures to ensure that the number of Indians represented by an MP or an MLA remains roughly the same. And based on the census of 1971, the number of Lok Sabha seats was fixed at 543, which meant that each MP represented roughly 1 million Indians. But the southern states like Tamil Nadu, Kerala and Karnataka fear losing political representation. The southern states argue that better governance and lower population growth should not result in reduced parliamentary representation. They fear that political influence will shift disproportionately towards high population states in the north. The northern states like Uttar Pradesh, Bihar and Rajasthan have higher population growth rates and are projected to gain more Lok Sabha seats. And amid the ongoing debate over the delimitation, senior Congress leader and Chandigarh MP Manish Tewari warned that the delimitation would also significantly impact North Indian states, with Punjab and Haryana set to lose Lok Sabha seats. Tewari called for either a new formula or a permanent freeze on the existing provisions, arguing that if delimitation follows the principle of one citizen, one vote, one value, both northern and southern states would see reduced representation. He noted that Punjab and Haryana, currently holding 13 and 10 Lok Sabha seats, would see their combined total drop to just 18 under the existing formula. And to discuss this further, I am joined by former Union Minister and Congress parliamentarian, Mr. Manish Tewari himself. Well, thank you so much, sir, for taking your time and joining us over here at Mirror Now. Now, we have been covering the story on delimitation, and there is a concern. A concern especially in the southern states who fear losing representation. You have put out a post on social media saying similar impact would also be seen in northern states. How would North India be impacted by delimitation?
Article 82 mandates that after each census, there will be a readjustment of the total number of seats in the Lok Sabha, and within the states, the Lok Sabha seats would also be readjusted. When the 44th constitutional amendment was passed in 1976, it effectively froze the number of seats in the Lok Sabha as they stood after the 1971 census, that is 543, in order to incentivize the goals of population control. By the 84th Amendment of the Constitution, this freeze was extended from the year 2000 to the year 2026. Now, unfortunately, the census, which was supposed to take place in 2021, has not taken place. Whenever that census takes place, and it needs to take place sooner than later because we've not had a census since 2011, the seats in the Lok Sabha would have to be readjusted. Now, if the readjustment takes place on the basis of the current principle or the current formula, which is one citizen, one vote, and one value, not only would the southern states be impacted, but the northern states would also be impacted. Let me give you an example. The number of seats of Punjab would increase from 13 to 18. Haryana would increase from 10 to 18. Himachal Pradesh would remain at the current 4. Jammu and Kashmir will increase marginally from 6 to 9. But the total number of seats which these North Indian states have in the enhanced Lok Sabha would come down significantly. We are already marginalized, we will become completely inconsequential. Then inter-C also within these states, there would be problems. Would Punjab accept parity with Haryana? If it does, it is very good. But there is this Bade Bhai, Chote Bhai syndrome, which characterizes the relationship between Punjab and Haryana. Then, would Himachal Pradesh accept that its representation remains at 4 seats only? Jammu and Kashmir, will it accept a marginal increase? And these northwestern states are border states. They are very sensitive from a national security standpoint also. They have borders with both Pakistan and China. So ultimately, either you will have to freeze the delimitation at the 1971 census level in perpetuity, or you will have to find a new formula as to how this delimitation has to be done. Because if it is done on the current basis, then only those states which did not practice population control or were not in sync with the national goals, that is the central Indian states, only they would be benefited.
Mr. Tewari, population is on a constant rise and there seems to be no real solution to it so far. There cannot be one shoe fits all formula for all states alike, and as the population of every state is different, are you suggesting that while new formula should be devised, the formula or the mechanism for delimitation for different states should also vary in tandem with their population census?
That is something which has to be thought through. And before any delimitation exercise is carried out, government must bring a proposal before the Lok Sabha as to what needs to be, what should be the first principles of this delimitation, what should be the formula. The difficulty with what you are suggesting is that if you are going to have multiple formulas, those multiple formulas, will they be acceptable to all the states? For example, if you're applying a particular formula to Kerala, which going by the current formula may retain the number of seats it has in the Lok Sabha, or maybe lose a seat here or there. Now, if you are applying a different formula to Kerala and another formula to, let's say, Uttar Pradesh, and a third formula, let's say, to Punjab, would that be acceptable and would that be even constitutionally kosher? Is a question which needs to be thought through very, very carefully. The fact remains that we've evolved as a democracy in the past 70 years. Along with that evolution, have come challenges also. And that is why I'm saying the difficulty is not with delimitation. The difficulty is with the basis of delimitation. And that is something which the government needs to discuss transparently with the opposition and the entire country, because everybody is a stakeholder in this.
Now, your ally, Mr. Tewari, DMK, maintains that there are states which have carried out population control policies for the last few years. They are now asking, why should they be penalized for being able to curb population growth? MK Stalin has now urged Tamilians to have more kids. They are asking for more kids to be born as soon as possible. Do you think there is a need for an all-party meeting on this matter? Because the Home Minister maintains South won't lose any seats on a pro-rata basis. DMK is trying to mislead Tamil Nadu.
First and foremost, it is not only Tamil Nadu which will lose seats. Even Punjab would lose by proportion, because Punjab has seen significant migration over the past 3 or 4 decades of people who have gone to shores far and beyond. Of course, some of them have been brought back very humiliatingly in chains and shackles, but that's a different debate altogether. So it is not a concern which is confined to Tamil Nadu alone. You see, ultimately, when the Home Minister says pro rata, what does he mean? Because the principle that has been followed so far with regard to delimitation, till 1971, I think over the first, second, and perhaps the third delimitation commission is one citizen, one vote, and one value. Now, if that formula has to be extended further, then by extrapolation, it is going to lead to a serious queue. And only the laggard states are going to benefit from the increase in the number of seats, which would be a windfall for them. And not only is this confined to the Lok Sabha. You see, because if the number of Lok Sabha seats increase, then the number of the number of assembly seats would also increase, which means you will correspondingly send more people to the Council of States also. And so the character of the Council of States would also change. So this is an issue which is fraught with complexity. It needs to be handled with a very cool mind, and it needs to be thought through very carefully. And therefore, before any delimitation exercise is carried out, whenever the census takes place, it should happen sooner than later. But if this government wants to push the census off till 2031, even in 2031, this problem will remain the same if the formula remains the same.
Now, what the DMK is demanding is a status quo for 30 years starting 2026. Should delimitation be postponed? And is the Congress party opposed to it?
I do not speak for the Congress party, I speak for myself. And as I earlier said, that per se, there is no problem with delimitation. The problem is with the basis of delimitation. The basis of delimitation will have to be re-explored and re-understood. And a new basis would have to be found, because let us presume, you freeze it at the 1971 levels for another 30 years. Effectively, what have you done is you've kicked the ball down the road for another 3 decades. 3 decades later, this problem will become even far more complex. So eventually, someone will have to apply their minds and find out as to how, regional concerns with regard to representation in the Lok Sabha continues to be done in an equitable manner. And it is challenging, but somebody will have to really bell the cat or catch the bull by the horns.
Now, Mr. Tewari, so which are the states which are going to benefit through delimitation? Will only the central belt of states with larger population comparatively be the gainers?
Along with some other Western states also, which may have seen a migration of population because of better economic opportunities. Some of the Western states have also economically done well. But definitely going by the current principles of delimitation, the southern states would be losers, but equally the northern states would also be equally bigger losers. The states to the north of Delhi, for example, if you apply the current principles, the number of seats in Delhi will increase from the current 7 to 12, right? Because, people have migrated to Delhi over a period of time because of better economic opportunities from all across the country. But correspondingly, the states to the north of Delhi would lose.
Well, absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Tewari, for taking our time and joining us over here at Mirror Now and putting things into perspective for a better understanding of our viewers on this issue of delimitation. And to discuss this further, I'm joined by an esteemed panel of guests this evening. I'm joined by Advocate P. Krishnadas, who's the Kerala BJP spokesperson. I'm also joined by Maya Sharma, senior journalist. I'm also joined by Dr. Syed Hafeez, who's a spokesperson of the DMK. Good evening to all of you. Thank you so much for taking our time and joining us here. I would first go across to Dr. Syed Hafeez, a spokesperson of the DMK. Dr. Hafeez, all this while, the way we have been covering the delimitation story is from a southern perspective. But today, the former Union Minister and the Congress MP from Chandigarh, Manish Tewari, has put things into perspective from a North India perspective. He is saying it's not just the southern states, it's also the northern states like Haryana, like Jammu and Kashmir and also Punjab that are bound to get impacted because their population too is not a match to the other larger states in the central belt of India. Given the situation then, would you want the government to either, what Mr. Manish Tewari is demanding, is to put this delimitation exercise on hold for perpetuity, or for that matter, devise a new role, a new mechanism, a new formula way by which each state gets its representation in tandem with the population they hold, because it cannot be a case of one shoe fits all for all the states alike.
The crux of this entire issue is that any state should not lose the percentage of representation it has when it comes to the parliament. That is the simplest demand and the legitimate demand of the DMK and the demand of the Tamil Nadu. This is the crux. You apply which formula, you don't apply which formula, that's not the matter. As far as Tamil Nadu is concerned, Tamil Nadu has 7.2% of the number of members of the parliament compared to the entire country. So by applying the existing formula for vote, one value, one citizen, then definitely that is going to be altered, and the representation of the states which have implemented a rigid population control policy and brought down the fertility rate are going to be punished. Now, see, politically, Tamil Nadu is being sidelined when it comes to devolution, despite the number of representations. Imagine a scenario where Tamil Nadu will further lose more seats. Their say in the parliament, their say in the power dynamics of the union government will come down. Naturally, the existing government, by its way of working, has shown that they work for the numbers. For UP, the cess amount goes more. The devolution goes more. For Bihar, the devolution goes more. There is injustice when it comes to fiscal policy. There is injustice when it comes to devolution of funds. So that will furthermore weaken the stand of the states, southern states or northeastern or any state for that matter.
I have paucity over time, and I will have to give a chance to everybody to speak. Dr. Hafeez, I will have to interject. Ms. Maya Sharma, is it only a constitutional exercise, delimitation, or is there politics behind it? Because we cannot look the other way when it comes to politics. When we're talking about the central belt of states, they are all governed by the BJP as opposed to the north and the south.
Definitely, most people, especially in the parts of India that will be affected, whether it's the western states, some of the northern states and the southern states, do have a sense of suspicion as to what it means for them, because it must be seen in the context of other things as well. We just heard about the devolution of funds, that some states get a whole lot more because of the population. We've talked about recently the three-language formula and the fear of imposition of Hindi on states where it is not the major language spoken. In that whole context, and in the context of some suspicion as to the honesty or the full disclosure of what the central government is up to, it is definitely political as well. Of course, it's directly political in terms of the number of seats and the amount of say a state will have when it comes to members of parliament. We have this great big new parliament building, and if we're looking at 848 MPs or above 800 MPs, if most of them are from a certain set of North Indian states, then obviously they will be calling the shots. So in the context of what has been happening, I think that it is definitely political, and the concern of the people in the states which will be affected by delimitation is a valid one, because honestly, there's not been much openness on many major decisions taken by the centre of late.
Okay, Advocate P. Krishnadas, you've heard what Ms. Maya Sharma had to say. Mr. Krishnadas, is the delimitation exercise the basic premise of it, the basic basis on which delimitation exercise is carried out, is that skewed, especially when it comes to the population census of every single state? Is there an agenda of the government, is what the opposition parties have been hinting at?
Madam, there is no agenda or there is no separate thinking like that when the DMK representative also mentioned, and the Congress leader also was mentioned, that there is no such agenda in this matter. This is part of the constitutional functioning or constitutional duty of the government. Earlier also the same was conducted in 1971, and thereafter also in 2002 also Delimitation Commission was exercising their powers, and the process was continuing on the basis of that process taken by the appropriate government or the appropriate authority for delimitation. That is in central or the general public elections or the state-wise elections and state assemblies also. The same was happening in every state, or during the time when 1971 also the same procedure was implemented. There is no specific agenda or any type of agenda behind the delimitation process.
Okay.
That is as part of the paraphernalia taken on the basis of the conditions and their limitation procedure, which was adopted by the Delimitation Commission or as part of the amendments happened in 2022 also in delimitation process. And that process will continue on the basis of the constitutional provisions.
All right.
The entire matter will be discussed before the parliament or the appropriate assemblies when the delimitation process will continue in their states or the all over India in general elections also. That process will continue.
Well, considering the fact that census is still pending since 2021 over the premise of a pandemic, we are waiting for the census to be carried out first before we jump the gun onto delimitation. But 60 seconds before we wrap this conversation, Ms. Maya Sharma, do you feel that there is a need for the government to devise a new formula altogether, like Manish Tewari was saying, because the present existing formula doesn't seem to be doing justice to the representation of the people in every single state?
Well, yes, because of course the number of people represented by an elected representative, the smaller it is, the more manageable it is. If one MP is representing 5 million people, it's just not efficient. So there does have to be something worked out, but doing it based purely on population is clearly something that is not being welcomed, which will not work. Many people will consider it unfair. It's like waiving loans after some people have returned the loans and some people haven't. It's advantage to people who have not followed that whole population management thing that was actually the reason for the freeze on delimitation. So yes, probably a new formula, a lot of thought has to go into figuring out how to make this work.
Well, thank you so much to all of you for taking our time and joining us here. Advocate P. Krishna Das, Samia Sharma and Dr. Syed Hafeez. Well, we are waiting to see whether the government is going to reach out to all the parties alike, get them on board, have a threadbare discussion on the issue of delimitation because it concerns every single state. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of the broadcast. Lots more lined up. Stay tuned and keep watching Mirror Now for more news and updates.